Hey, everybody, and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not News, your favorite podcast about fake news. My name is Beth.
And I'm Kelly.
Hey, Kelly, how's it going today?
Pretty good. Happy New Year, Beth.
Yeah, Happy New Year. We made it to 2018. The countdown is on for midterms.
And possibly nuclear war with South Korea or North Korea. But hey, you know.
Hey, you know.
Every day brings new possibilities.
Doesn't it feel that way? I was telling you that one of the things that I like to do to help me when I've been reading lots of fake news stories or when I'm feeling really depressed is I really turn to music. So I was telling you it would be really fun to start having like a song to go along with our episodes. And unfortunately, because of copyright rules, we can't play them in the episode, but I can put a link on the blog. And so we were talking about the song for this episode would be REM's It's the End of the World.
Please don't take that literally, Donald. Don't take it literally. We don't really mean it needs to be the end of the goddamn world. Please.
It doesn't have to be, but it could be. So
it just might feel like it.
Yeah, I don't know if that song will actually help people not feel depressed, but I felt like it embodied the spirit of this episode. So, Kelly, before we get started on all of this, let's hear something fun. Do you have anything fun for us today? Anything that's happened in your life that has been nice that our listeners can take in as a little bit of enjoyment before we move on to the end of the world?
You know, I guess if I were to say, hey, you know what did happen in 2017? A lot of really great books were put out. And I know that Beth and I have talked a lot about adding a song of the podcast, and that's fantastic. I don't listen to as much music as a lot of people do because I'm constantly listening to audiobooks or podcasts, but mostly audiobooks. So, hey, if I were to say there are some great things that happened in 2017, I'm going to go ahead here and plug a book called Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Ng is her last name, and I could be saying that wrong. But that was a fantastic book. It was one of the last books that I read. There were plenty of great books. I'm an avid reader. I surpassed my Goodreads goal of the year. You're welcome. But I'm always happy to hear from anyone who wants to recommend a book to me. I read almost everything. So that would be maybe my good thing that I want to put out there in the world. That is a fantastic book. Again, it's Little Fires Everywhere. Came out last year. Go read it.
Is it fiction or nonfiction?
It is fiction.
Nice. We can use a little break from the nonfiction sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was looking back at 2017 and thinking, oh my God, I'm so glad this year is over. And then I thought, this is the year that I started my podcast. This is the year that I was inspired to become more active. I was inspired to not sit at home, although I'm sitting at home right now recording this, but still, just to not be on the sidelines anymore. And to really try to do more.
No, absolutely.
And I think that that's a common thing that people have found is that even though none of us wanted, not none of us, I didn't want Donald Trump to be elected, but out of it has spurred a lot of activism and a lot of good changes. I think that will help in the future to not only avoid a new Donald Trump, but will really help our society move in the direction that we want it to go. Just looking at like the Me Too movement, I never thought on January 1st, 2017, that by the end of the year, sexual assault in the workplace and sexual harassment would have such a big impact. And whoever thought that the movie industry would be completely changed by the end of the year. And I can't be upset about that. That's a fantastic thing that has happened for our society to move forward and to move out of this sexual harassment and sexual assault against women, especially in the workplace. And that's a win. And it's odd that it really took this focus of having this awful president come into office and start just fucking with us for us to turn around and be like, no.
Right. Like we literally got pinched on the ass and we were like, no, stop it. You're an asshole. And finally everyone was like, what? What's happening to women? And it doesn't, Jason Chaffetz with his nonsense of I can't look my wife, my daughter in the eye. You don't have to be a father, a husband, a brother, an uncle, a nephew to see women as human beings. Like, let's just stop that right now. We are 50% of the population of the world, and we are just as much human beings who don't deserve to be degraded just because you find a part of our body sexy or because you want to have a little bit of power over what women do with their bodies or their lives. We are human beings who are perfectly capable of making our own decisions in the workplace, our own decisions about our own health care. We are perfectly capable human beings all the time and deserve to be treated that way. And the fact that we're in 2017 and that seems like a shock to some people is just really mind-blowing.
I understand the force of the Me Too movement and how that needed to happen, but I honestly think it could have been the other way. They should have just had a hashtag for women who haven't been harassed or assaulted, because I don't know a woman, period, who hasn't had some form of comment, harassment. It doesn't have to be full-on sexual assault. In fact, I was talking to my husband. An article came out about massage envy. Did you hear about that? There was a scandal with massage envy and women feeling sexually harassed or even assaulted by their male therapists.
Oh, no, I hadn't heard this.
Yeah. So Jimmy's like, oh, massage envy. He's telling me this story. And I was like, oh, yeah, I went there once. That's why I didn't go back. It's like, I didn't even think about that. But that literally, I have had one massage at Massage Envy, and I felt so uncomfortable after by the way the male therapist acted that I never went back.
Wow.
And he was like, just blown away, like sitting there, like mouth open, listening to me. He's like, I didn't know that happened to you. And I was like, well, to be honest, like, I didn't even remember it. It was so normalized that women get harassed.
Right.
I didn't even think about that when the Me Too thing came out. Like, that wasn't even one that was on my mind. But, that's what happens.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of women are right now with this Me Too movement. It seems like we're all looking back and thinking, there are so many of us who are survivors of rape or incest or really shocking amounts of sexual assault. And then we're looking back now at, because of this Me Too movement, I feel like it's giving us a perspective of being able to look back at the little cuts, the 1,000 little cuts that lead us into this patriarchal society where we've allowed and it's not even that we've allowed, we've told people, and we've either been told, oh, that's just the way that person is. That's always been a big one for me is, well, he's just like that. He's just very flirty. He's very handsy. And you're like, no, but that's not okay. Why is him being flirty and handsy more important than my own self-protection of my body? Why is it okay for them to touch me? What if I'm the kind of person who doesn't want to be touched? They're not more important than me. You don't get to make that kind of justification of their action.
Right. I think for a long time we've put up with it, and we've put up with it because we either didn't think that we could do anything about it, or we literally couldn't do anything about it. And now we're saying, no, we're not going to put up with even the little stuff, even those little comments and jokes and touches and insinuations are not okay, because it leads to more, and it leads to actual assaults. And it leads to women, not being promoted, not being taken seriously in the workplace, not going for jobs that they could absolutely get and go for because of what it's like. And it affects so many things in our life. Even, I was listening to Pod Save America, and Anna Marie Cox was talking with the guys about it. And she was saying, I want to give you guys the freedom here to process this because you need to. But she was saying, look, like this morning when I'm thinking about going for a run, I'm thinking, oh, I can't go because I can't go as a woman alone with headphones in on a dark wooded path. That's not smart. Whereas you guys want to go for a run, all you're thinking about is what time do I want to go? Something along those lines is what she had said. And that's really true. And men haven't realized, I think, how much of our lives is around planning to not get assaulted. And it's a constant thing.
Right. And just how it affects your own career. I mean, I know just in my own particular instance, and I know there's got to be stuff in your own career as well, but my own career trajectory after I graduated with a master's degree, I was focused on Afghanistan. And one of the things I wanted to do was go to Afghanistan to work for an NGO to help citizens of Afghanistan, because there was so much going on that there weren't enough people going over to actually assist with figuring out how to do water for a community or figuring out how to help locals understand the greater world around them so that they didn't have to be stuck under just this tribalism rule. And there was no one in my family who was on board with this. And I had to take that into consideration because it was, you want to do greater good. That was always my plan. But at the same time, the main concern was always, but you're a woman. And you're a woman going to a foreign country that has a war going on, and it's not necessarily friendly to women there. And would you be able to get things done without just being attacked because you're a woman?
Right.
So there is that level of career depreciation where even if it's your passion and you want to do it, there's so much you have to take into consideration because you are a woman and you have a woman's body, and there's so much you can't do because of that.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting. Want to talk about some fake news?
I do want to talk about some fake news. Let's get into it.
All right. So today we are going to talk about how should journalists report on fake news coming from politicians or from people talking about things that aren't true. Should journalists report exactly what they say, or how should they deal with that?
Right.
And
so what's the difference between reporting on what politicians say and just being a propaganda wing of the government? Is that about right? Yeah.
I think so. So one of the things that Elizabeth and I had talked about at kind of in the beginning of the podcast is we talked about, is DJT fake news? And we talked about, the fact that he himself is not a news organization. So we felt like he wasn't fake news. But looking back at this year, he has been the catalyst to so much fake news. And he's also told so many documented lies.
Right.
That I feel like he has crossed a line into a category.
Right. And not just that he's been a major proponent of spreading fake news. Anything that sort of fits into his agenda, if he tweets it out, whether it's an alt-right Twitter handle that he's retweeting, or it's
a Russian bot.
Right. A Russian bot, something on Fox and Friends that has spurred his attention, anything that fits his narrative, he's happy to create a news story around it, whether it's fake or not. And that doesn't just include news. That includes fake reports that he is spending our tax money to investigate things like, was he wiretapped during, and there's no evidence, but let's go ahead and start these same with voter fraud, starting these big investigations, wasting millions of taxpayer dollars for things that have no evidence behind them.
So we have this article from CODA, and CODA is an organization in Eastern Europe. They aren't on Media Bias Fact Check, but it does seem very legitimate just from reading it and being able to discern what they're talking about. What they do is they group things together. So this is under Disinformation Crisis. And if you go to their website, you can click on Disinformation Crisis and it pulls up all of their articles that are about that topic. So that was kind of fascinating.
Yeah. And if it's hard to find the website, I believe is it codastory.com?
Yep.
Yes,
exactly.
It's codastory.com. And what they've done is they've tried to set aside certain topics that they're going to have a focus on for a certain amount of time before they move on to something else, so that they can give it the time it requires, sort of like a magazine as opposed to a newspaper article.
Yeah. So this article in particular that we're looking at today is called Don't Fight Fake News, Tell Stories Instead. And it says, in the battle against fake news, journalists need to stop reporting what people say and report what they do. And this is by Natalia Antalava, which I am 100% sure is how she pronounces her name. And she is in Budapest of Romania, which, again, 100% sure that's how they say their town.
You're knocking it out of the park today, Beth.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So this article was written on December 6, 2017. And they talk about two women in here. One is named Maria Zakharova.
I think it's Zakharova.
Zakharova?
Zakharova sounds right.
Zakharova. Okay.
Your beautiful Russian accent, Beth.
Oh, yes. I have a great Russian accent. So let me read it to you here with my Russian accent. So, Maria Zakharova, the spokeswoman of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that's who she is.
That's amazing. I thought I was actually talking to someone from Russia right there.
Well, I have secret past. I'd not tell you.
Am I going to be part of this investigation?
No. No, but this lady, Maria, she works for the Russian government. And basically, just reading about this, to me, it seems like her equivalent would be like Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
That's what it seemed like to me, too. I know that they're comparing her here to Kellyanne Conway, but it does seem like her actual job is more equivalent to Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yeah, so she meets with the media and gives them information. And it says here, her press events are intense. She produces a tsunami of information in which facts are mixed out of context and sprinkled with lies to fit the narrative she has chosen to push that day. She blends them so well that by the end, it's incredibly hard to dissemble fiction from truth. So that's the other reason that she reminds me of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And also Kellyanne Conway. I mean, she's kind of like both of them.
I would agree with that. I almost want to say the job she does seems more Kellyanne Conway, because Sarah Huckabee Sanders is that press secretary. She's basically putting out the press reports from the White House. Kellyanne Conway, on the other hand, is just, she goes off on her own tangents and she comes up with her own stuff. I think she was the one who came up with alternative facts.
Oh, she was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're equivalent. I think that they could be compared pretty reasonably.
So what this article is talking about is when this lady uses a classic disinformation tool on the journalists, is how should they cover it? And it does say journalists in the U.S. covering the similar blend of fact and fiction put out by President Donald Trump and his trusted spokeswoman, Kellyanne Conway, face the same dilemma. So they're talking about, do you really keep reporting this toxic noise and thereby involuntarily helping to spread it when you have another option? And what they're saying in here, the other option is to tell stories instead. And so instead of just reporting this person said this, or this is their press release, and it gives an example here. That is why when we cover earthquakes, we don't read the government press releases about the aid that has been handed out to the victims. We visit the victims. So they're saying, go be journalists, go interview people, go talk about their stories. Don't just give word for word lies that the government is telling you, which was interesting.
It was. And it reminded me of some things I heard from journalists around the beginning of this particular presidency, where, do you remember there was a lot of problems getting press credentialing for real, what we would call real news sources? So Breitbart had no problem getting their press credentials. Fox didn't have any problem. But
InfoWars has one.
InfoWars. Because,
that's not scary.
That's trustworthy. That's where I get all my news. that and the Weekly World News. Any day now, aliens are definitely going to be having a baby with Elvis, and then that baby is going to be president. Oh, wait, did that happen?
Don't forget the Daily Stormer.
Oh.
Very trustworthy.
Yeah. Did they get press credentials?
I don't think so, but I think DJT just tweeted out something by them. There was something going on with them recently.
Yeah, that's not shocking. But this reminded me of when the press was having problems with credentialing. There was this sort of backlash of, well, maybe let's just not go. There was a debate between, should we push to get this credentials, or should we just stop reporting what the equivalent of a press release, which is nothing. That's just whatever the government wants you to know. That's basically, are we going to just report what they're willing to tell us? Or should we just say, okay, well, we heard what they said. We actually know what's going on. Should we just write the stories instead? And I think that's a good question. I think that's what this article brings up. And it's something I think more journalists are going to have to think about. Although it is nice having some of those really hard-hitting reporters. There are some people there. Maggie Haberman, April Ryan. Yeah. They're amazing. And the fact that and they're not the only ones. They're just the two right now that I can think of. But we need to have some people there who are asking those real questions.
Yeah. Well, another interesting thing about this article, which I didn't know, and this is kind of interesting reading something written from the Eastern European perspective, is that apparently Russia really hates BuzzFeed. And I was like, really? So this is one of the things that this Maria lady has submitted a question to the embassy. Is BuzzFeed a real media company or not? And basically the embassy hasn't answered it. And so it's caused this problem. But I was like, what is the deal with Russia and BuzzFeed, right?
Right.
I looked up this article by AOL and it says BuzzFeed sued over defamation for Trump dossier report. So back in January 10th of 2017, BuzzFeed was the outlet that released the dossier that linked Donald Trump and Russia.
Right. This is the Steele dossier. This is the P dossier.
This is the one.
Yeah.
Russia didn't like it.
I don't know why. Why would they not like that, Beth? Where it literally says that Trump was colluding with Russia in the election. What? They don't like that?
Right. Yeah, they didn't like that. So basically, Russia is shooting the messenger here. They're mad at BuzzFeed over this. That was something I had no idea. And then I also pulled up another article by RT Russia Today, and it says 2017 could have been, somebody wrote it that doesn't speak English. Okay, 2017 could have been year Russia and US made up. Now they stand on brink of new Cold War. And this was written on December 29th of 2017, so it's very current.
Right.
And what this is talking about, this actually made me laugh so hard. They say in here that Congress, an alliance between the bitter Republican establishment and the vengeful Democrats has since formed in Congress. Really?
Yeah.
Driving the anti-Russian agenda throughout the year.
Yeah, that's obviously written by someone who has not visited the United States or read any news about the United States or our congressional hatred of one another, basically.
Right. It also says Congress also did not pass up the opportunity to humiliate its president like an untrustworthy child by placing severe restrictions on Trump's ability to loosen any of the measures regardless of international dynamics, thus rendering all future diplomatic efforts likely futile. So they're pissed off about the sanctions. They're pissed off that DJT can't do anything about it. And they think our Congress gets along.
Well,
which is,
I think a lot of that has to do with their own propaganda. I mean, because they're not, at no point are they talking about any of the stuff that's going on inside of Russia, which has caused the sanctions. They're not talking about Syria. They're not talking about what happened in Crimea. They're not talking about the human rights abuses that they've been caught doing, including to journalists, including to, people of LGBT. Their human rights abuses are pretty renowned there, not to mention the fact that if anyone wants to come by and say that Russia is a democracy, they are obviously fooling themselves.
right.
Russia is a democracy in that Putin will allow someone else to be his puppet and be elected, but he will always still maintain his own power.
Yeah, definitely. So it was very interesting to kind of look into some of that based off of this article from Coda. It was just good to see some of the differences in how we look at things and how they look at things. Just very interesting. But I think they have a good point about, it says, here's a quote. It says, around the world, journalists whose basic job description is to tell the truth are on the front line of this disinformation assault. But so far, they've struggled with how to report it. So it's definitely, I think, a difference for journalists that are being confronted with these, I don't even want to call it fake news. It's just lies.
It is lies, and it's, it gets into whether or not you want to give publicity to those lies, whether or not, because there's that, and I forget what the term is called, but when you repeat a lie over and over, 6 months later, when people remember it, they don't remember whether it was true or not. They just remember hearing it over and over. So they have higher tendency to believe the lie because of how many times they heard it, rather than, being able to say, oh, well, that was fake. You'd have to go back and research it. And we're better able to do that now, but it doesn't really take away the initial feeling of, is this a lie or is it not?
Yeah. So for this article, they definitely recommend that journalists focus on telling stories and not just reiterating press sound bites, which they recognize that takes longer. And that's part of the problem, is that that this requires resources and time that news cycles rarely allow. So I think part of it as consumers, what we can do is, first of all, pay for our news with getting our information from resources that have the resources and the time to actually tell good stories, because they're being paid for it and
Right.
They're not just dependent on clickbait ads, right?
Right. I 100% agree. I mean, if you want things like you want to be able to hear what journalists are doing overseas, they have to send people over there.
Right.
You can't find out what's going on in Israel or Afghanistan or Lebanon or Syria or even Russia without sending people there. And that costs money.
Yeah. So and journalists, even if they're not leaving their house, deserve a salary.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Job, and if they put their time into it, they should be paid a livable wage and be able to make a living at this. So paying for your news is become not as common, although in the last year news subscriptions did go up, which is great.
Right.
I think as citizens, as non-journalists, we need to do that. We need to take that responsibility on of saying, we want good news, so we're going to support good news outlets by subscribing, by paying for them. I know I subscribed to my local newspaper for like the first time ever this last year, and it's been really nice to have it. I actually really like it. It's digital, so I'm not getting like the actual paper because I know I wouldn't read those. But to be able to click on any article I want, is fantastic, and I really like it. So
I agree. I'm right there with you. We subscribe to the Washington Post through our Amazon subscription, or just through Amazon. You can pay for it through Amazon.
oh, really?
Yeah, because, well, they're owned by the same person. And then my husband is a big soccer fan. And since he's from overseas, he really likes The Guardian. And so he subscribes to The Guardian. And then I just use a basic news aggregator app on my phone for other things that I want to read.
Yeah.
That's not paid for, but it's the only one I use that isn't paid for.
Yeah. Well, I think just supporting ways to get your news that isn't the clickbait, sensational ads, that is going to help real journalists do their jobs correctly so that we can avoid this clickbait thing. And I think also responding back to these outlets that are like that and saying, hey, that's not what we want.
Right.
We want real journalism. We don't want, be the one that stands up and says, we're going to wait to get our facts right before we put this story out. Stop worrying about being scooped. Worry about being correct. And don't worry about covering every single word that comes out of DJT or Sarah Huckabee Sanders' mouth just because they say it. If it's not true, don't report on it. And like you were saying earlier with the press credentials at the beginning of the year, there was some talk of some of the news outlets saying look, stop going to the White House briefings if they're not going to tell the truth. And while I don't think that they need to go that far, they could stop broadcasting them and they could edit what's actually given out to the public based on what's actually true.
Oh, absolutely.
And if it's not true, don't report it.
Yeah, maybe we could focus a little bit less on everything that they're saying that isn't true, because the focus seems to be so much on, look at these lies they're telling.
Right.
Don't even publicize the lies. Or better yet, say, here was one true thing they said. I mean, I don't really know how to get around it with this presidency because it's like 9 out of 10 things.
Yeah.
It's unreal. I can't. It blows my mind how many lies.
Yeah. I think, it would be interesting to see a program on like MSNBC or CNN where they refused to report on anything that was a lie from the White House and only reported on the truth, and to see what the difference between that show and a show that's reporting on everything. To have one show just report on the truth.
Right. On the facts.
On the facts.
Yeah.
It would be interesting.
It would. It might only be 5 minutes long.
Right. It could be, variable depending on the day.
Yeah.
There is another article that we have here from factcheck.org, and this is called The Whoppers of 2017. And it says, President Trump monopolizes our list of the year's worst falsehood and bogus claims. So they have dubbed President Trump the king of Whoppers. And I think that he's going to have to switch from McDonald's to Burger King, because if he's going to be the king of Whoppers, he better start going to Burger King.
Oh, Beth, that's so funny. I love it. Yes. He should get that little crown that they used to put in all the kids'
Oh, they have those still. And you can, if you're an adult, you can get two and put them together so it'll fit on your head.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah. So, yeah, the president of the United States is the biggest liar for 2017. So awesome. So they go through some of these here. So the biggest one is what he calls the so-called Russia hacking, which is a hoax and a phony Russian witch hunt.
It's just a witch hunt, Beth.
Yeah. And then he compared the conduct of the U.S. intelligence agencies to Nazi Germany. And then he falsely accused the dishonest news media of making it sound like I had a feud with the intelligent community. He claimed that his inaugural cloud went all the way back to the Washington Monument and sent out Little Spicy to say it was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Now, I will tell you that Donald Trump is a TV guy, and I'm not sure if he used the word eyeballs, but sometimes I've heard that what TV networks will do is they'll say, like, Instead of saying 15,000 people were watching, they'll say 30,000 eyeballs were on us at this time.
Clever.
So I'm not sure if Donald Trump was employing the eyeball statute when he claimed it was the largest audience ever to witness the inauguration. Or if by chance he weighed like the people versus, like, I mean, there's a lot of ways to interpret what he said there. Like Kellyanne Conway says, alternative facts.
I mean, you raise a good point. Maybe everyone there was not as fit as at the
pounds.
If they were the largest audience, it could have just been over, could have been a weight thing.
Yeah, it could have been. They could have all been in semi-trucks. And it was just...
Where's the lie, Beth? Where's the lie? I mean, come on. All of this stuff is obviously true. Sarah Huckabee Sanders said it. Sean Spicer said it. Kellyanne Conway said it. DJT said it. These are all trustworthy people, Beth. I mean, I would let any of them babysit my kid.
Oh, I thought you liked him.
Well, I mean, I would let them babysit my kid when he's 25.
Okay.
I'm not talking about right now. Let's focus on the, these are some alternative facts. When he's 25, I'll let him.
I know what you were talking about. You meant your kid like you have a baby goat. Because those are called kids.
No way. No way. I would not let them near my baby goat.
All right, I'm just trying to establish a line here. Okay. So this article says Trump is clearly an outlier. If he and his aides were removed from our list, we would be left with a dozen or more notable falsehoods, roughly distributed between the two parties. Basically, he spent the whole year lying.
He made their job harder or easier, depending on, he certainly gave them a job to do.
I'll tell you what, too. I get emails from factcheck.org, and I will tell you they are funded by a grant that is going away. It gets smaller every year until it disappears. So if you like what they're doing, they do have a donate now button on their website. And they are somebody who I definitely would consider donating to because they're doing important work. So, yeah, this is the 2017 roundup. So, Kelly, one of the reasons I want to bring this up, besides my fantastic joke about McDonald's and Burger King, was that what happens when your president is dubbed the king of Whoppers?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I see the way that we are regarded by the international community taking a giant leap backwards. I see the way that the middle class and the poor are being treated as just abysmal and something I'm not sure how we're going to, I don't know how long it's going to take to repair. I see us closer and closer to the brink of a nuclear war that is absolutely ridiculous because there are two toddlers in charge of two very dangerous arsenals between DJT and Kim Jong-un. I don't even know which one is the bigger baby. I mean, I have a 7-year-old who acts more adult than both of them.
Yeah. Well, one of the really big things that it leads to is fake news.
Yes, it does.
Because when people hear lies coming out of the mouth of the president of the United States of America, they think, oh my gosh, this is true. And I'm going to get on my blog and write about it. And I'm going to let my followers know about it because this has got to be true, right? So I found this blog post. I'm in a Facebook group for Snopes, and somebody had posted this. People post things and say, is this true? Is this true? And I've seen this blog come up a couple times. It's definitely whoever is putting this blog out, it's completely crap. But I don't know if it's actually very widespread or if it's just that somebody in the Snopes group follows this blog and is posting it. But it caught my eye because the title of this blog is Pissed Off Yet? ? All in caps, which is a huge sign of fake news. A Syrian man with 4 wives and 22 kids gets $360,000 a year in welfare.
Damn it. I am pissed off now. Beth, this must be true. Is it true, Beth?
You know what pisses me off is that no, this isn't true. And it's so ridiculous. Okay, I have to stop. Okay, this was written on December 27th of 2017 by Native Pawnee. Pretty sure that's a name. The name of the blog is Native Love. So it's like Apache Native Americans.us. This has got Russia written all over it. So first of all, this isn't even about a real person in America. It's about okay. Okay. It says anger is growing among U.S. citizens. They are outraged by the recent exposure of the consequences of Muslim immigration. Because as it turns out, they have to pay a fortune in social assistance to Syrian immigrants that are living in the United States. We have many cases in Europe, too. In Denmark, where a Syrian man with 3 wives and 20 kids gets DKK 214,000 in child benefits caused outrage in Denmark and proposals for changing the law. And it goes on to talk about this guy who's the subject line of the headline, who's in Germany.
So not Denmark? Not in the United States?
No, this isn't. Yeah, okay. So Snopes fact checked this, and they didn't fact check it from this blog, but they fact checked it from a German newspaper originally. And let me find. So it says, rumors about Agazia A, that's the guy's name, began with an article published by the German newspaper Rhein Zeitung on August 1st of 2016. The newspaper detailed how the man, his wives, and their children were settled into several different municipalities near Montabaur, and noted that the difficulties they had adapting to their new communities, as well as how internal conflicts developed because only some of the family members could receive social benefits. And the claim that he was receiving close to $400,000 a year in benefits was derived by a third party who used the man's circumstances to calculate a theoretical number. So basically, this guy was like, if you have 4 wives and 22 children, it would be this much money, which isn't true. It's not how it
theoretically
works. Yeah, it's not how benefits work in Germany. The country's laws do prohibit polygamy and don't allow someone to receive benefits for multiple families. Rather, a gentleman with 4 wives would select one wife and her respective children to be eligible for social assistance. The rest of the wives could apply on their own. So it is, and it's just complete bullshit over bullshit. There is a refugee from Syria with nearly 24 children and 4 wives that resettled in Germany. That's the only true part of this.
Right. And this is presupposing that none of them have jobs.
Right.
This is presupposing that, none of them have any family that's already there, because as we know, a lot of people left Syria with just what was on their back, but so many people have started to integrate. It's not as though there are not still refugee camps. It's not like they're just being put up in a penthouse and handed cash. That is not how any sort of refugee situation works.
And I get it that polygamy is not cohesive with a lot of cultures. So I get that part is really hard for a new culture to take in, even though it was okay in Syria and it's okay with where he's from and his culture, and maybe it's even normal.
And Utah.
Well, yeah, there's them.
Just saying.
It is illegal there, but yeah. I lived there for many years. So it would always be that the joke was always that the polygamists are in Provo. They're just down there in Provo. That's where they hang out. But
is that a place?
Yeah, Provo, Utah is.
Okay.
That's kind of where they are. But I don't think that's actually true. That's just kind of what I was told as a child growing up there, was that that's where the polygamists live. So I lived there. I lived in Utah for probably 12 years, and I don't think I ever met a polygamist. So it's not like they're everywhere.
Except in Provo.
Except in Provo. I didn't go to Provo very much.
That's because you weren't married to anyone there.
I also didn't drive. I was too young. So anyway, this is the kind of thing that makes it scary when your president is telling lies, because it opens up people to write things like this, especially with his focus on the Muslim community. There's definitely been an uptick in the fake news about Muslims. We're seeing that radiate through the fake news that we see. And I don't know. I don't like it. It makes me mad. So yes, Native Love, I am pissed off that you wrote this blog. I will say some of the other recent posts listed here are: newborn baby flushed down in the toilet gets miraculously saved by firefighters. An Army veteran arrested after tying her service dog to a tree and shooting it dead as her boyfriend filmed. That sounds like it happened.
Oh, there's one that doesn't have all capitalization of its headline, which it must mean that there are multiple people doing this, which just blows my mind. Baby left freezing cold to die. Cat climbs into tiny box, starts meowing for help. That seems like a news story.
Yeah. I think the caps thing is this person just has a really old computer and it gets stuck on caps, sometimes. I'm going to go with that. It's maybe
a 16-year-old kid who lives with his 80-year-old grandfather who's very upset. And he's the one who types in all caps.
This has got Russian troll all over it, because it says Apache Native Americans.us, right? That's like their website. And it says we have many cases in Europe too. Like, I just feel like this is a European person writing this. This is directly coming from the IRA in, not the Irish Republican Army, the IRA in Russia, the one that's the Russian trolls.
Yes.
What was it? Information. I don't remember what it stands for, but I do remember IRA.
I would agree. I would absolutely 100% agree. This does not seem like it is written by anyone who's a native English speaker.
No.
It is, and it's not just a grammatical thing. This is the way that things are put into sentences. It's very odd.
And it's all clickbait too, so don't go there. Don't click on it. I took a bullet for you guys by clicking on it. So, okay, so let's move on. What else do you want to talk about? You want to talk about Megyn Kelly?
Sure. Let's talk about Megyn. So earlier this year, Megyn left Fox and started her, what we'll call putting her life back on track after Fox. There are many things that I will congratulate her for. I think I really respect her for coming out against a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes with sexual harassment in Fox News. But I think that one of the most controversial things that she did this year was she decided that one of her first interviews was going to be with Alex Jones of InfoWars.
Yes. So real quick, before we go on, do you think that NBC made her go through like a delousing before she was allowed in? Like leaving Fox News, coming to NBC? I'm kind of imagining it like one of those movies where like the virus has taken over the world and the scientists are all in the yellow, like head to toe, the masks on, and they have to go through like the containment chamber. Do you think that's what it's like?
I don't know. I don't know if she just has to, how you unbrainwash, but I do feel like at a certain point, she must have realized that being at Fox was not doing her any favors. I mean, she has said some pretty awful things in the past. Everyone's entitled to their opinion as long as it's not spreading fake news, but I don't know. She's gone too far in the past. I feel like she's trying to pull back. Everyone can have a second chance. I'm not going to begrudge her that. I remember when this interview was scheduled to happen, there was a big backlash on Twitter because so many people were upset that she was giving a platform to Alex Jones.
Right. Which is why we want to talk about it, because this is what we're talking about today. Should journalists report all of the crap? So Should Megyn Kelly have given Alex Jones this platform? So we do have an article here. It's by HuffPost, and it's Megyn Kelly grills Alex Jones in controversial interview. And then it says, but Jones evaded most of her toughest questions. So what do you think about this one, Kelly?
I was glad. I was glad that she did it. I fully supported her. I feel like I don't think Alex Jones needs a bigger platform. However, sometimes you need to turn on a light to make the roaches scatter. And I think that Megyn Kelly was the wrong person to do this interview. I don't think that she's hard enough. I don't think she pressed him enough on some of the really disgusting things that he believes. The fact that he put out there so much about Sandy Hook being this conspiracy theory and that it's a false flag. I hate that term. I absolutely hate it. I hate that there are all these people who wake up every day without their fucking child because this child went crazy and had access to so many firearms. And I remember that day. I remember holding my son and just wanting to, I never wanted to let him go. Even just recently on Christmas, I received the Pete Swayze book. Swayze? I don't know. He was the photojournalist who was the photographer behind the scenes with Barack Obama. And there's a photo of him that day where he gets the news, and then you turn the page and it's him holding his daughter. And he has a caption that said he wouldn't let her go. Like, this was a really long hug. And I think that every parent felt like that day.
100%.
Yeah, I'm sure you did too. You have a daughter the same age as my son. You had to have felt it too.
I remember hearing about it on my way to work. And so I had already dropped her off at daycare. And so I couldn't hug her until I got home that night. And it was heartbreaking. I just remember just feeling absolutely sick. And you always, whenever you hear about an active shooter situation, you're like, oh, please don't let it be like a high body count, like please, as much as you don't want anybody to have to die, like hearing like, okay, only like 1 or 2 people were shot versus, 10 or 12. And then you hear 23 kids, I believe it was, and then 3 adults, so like 26 total died at Sandy Hook. And it was just like, and like the air just left you. You couldn't breathe. And then, of course I'm at work, so I have to put on the smile and start helping customers. And it was like, how do you do that, today?
Right.
But it was rough. And to hear somebody like him say that he doesn't believe that he called it a hoax and claimed that there were crisis actors there.
Which is just, he's such an asshole. He is the worst of the worst. Like he is one of the only people that I feel like I should never run into him. I will do prison time if I run into him. I hate very few people, but I really hate him. He bothers me on a visceral level. He makes me angry just looking at his face. And, while I respect what Megyn Kelly was trying to do, I feel like she was trying to break free of that right-wing bias that she had been known for at Fox. And I feel like I could see this being an idea in her head of, oh, if I go after him and I do the interview with him, people will know that I'm not just a part of this right-wing conspiracy anymore. I'm not a part of Fox. I'm my own person. But she's just not strong enough for it. I mean, he is a big personality.
And here's what she said in her words. She said, some thought we shouldn't broadcast this interview because his baseless allegations aren't just offensive, they're dangerous, which I agree with. But here's the thing. Alex Jones isn't going away. Over the years, his YouTube channel has racked up 1.3 billion views. He has millions of listeners and the ear of our current president, which I also don't disagree with. But to your point, I think you're right that she wasn't the right person to do it. And we were talking earlier about, who could it have been? And I really think that it should have been somebody who isn't involved in a political show, because then it's not about left or right. It's just about factual journalism.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it should have been Stone Phillips or whoever, you know.
6 weeks ago, I would have said Charlie Rose.
Right.
I wouldn't say it anymore.
Well, you know what? I don't care if Alex Jones is in the room with a sexual predator. Go for it. I still say Charlie Rose. That's my vote.
Yeah, I know that they gave a little bit of time to one of the parents from Sandy Hook, and she did ask him about a couple of the other things that he talks about, but it's not enough. It wasn't enough to show how much of a despicable human being he is. And unless you're willing to confront him and make him angry, like what I wanted is do you remember I want that defendant at the end of the trial where, the lawyer is pounding and pounding and pounding at them, and finally they break and they say something really stupid, or, like the end of Nixon with Michael Steele, where, President Nixon says, "It's not illegal because I'm the president." You want him to, I want someone to make him crack. You're
talking about A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson.
Yes,
you can't handle the truth.
Right. Not that he would do it in a positive spin, but, it took him getting this contentious divorce hearing for him to even admit that this is a character that he's portraying. It's not who he really is. And even that is still disgusting, because he is over and over said that this is who he is. And this is all a money thing to him. He sells supplements. This is nothing but money to him.
And the thing is, and this was, I think, the fear of people, it does say a scan of social media also shows the interview won Jones a few new fans. So there are people tweeting that, they're a new fan based on the interview. They're following him now. He's saying that his social media following went up after the interview. And that's the danger, is if you give a voice to these people, they are going to reach their target audience just by the sheer volume of people that they're reaching. And if you believe this kind of stuff and you see that Alex Jones is going to be on and you want to hear what he has to say, you're going to tune in.
Yeah, unfortunately. It's, even if you're kind of on the fence of, I've seen him a couple of times, around on Facebook, or someone has shared something that he said, but I'm not sure that I agree with him. And then you watch it and she just wasn't tough enough for that. She's apparently way too tough for DJT. But when it comes to Alex Jones, she is not tough enough. And I really wanted that.
I like your analysis earlier of like shining the light on the roaches, because I do think at the end of the day, that is true. You can't ignore the roaches. So even though this may have gotten him a few more followers, I think that it was the right thing to do to expose him as well.
Yeah.
Because the more people that don't agree with him that know about him, and that's honestly part of what my goal with this podcast is, and why we do talk about fake news sites and why we do review some of these really crazy ass people, is that I want people to know their names so that when they hear somebody saying, "Oh, I heard this interview by Alex Jones and InfoWars," they can say, whoa, stop. No, that is not a good source. Please don't listen to him. Tell me what he said and I will give you a better source to go listen to, because that is not the person to put your trust in. So, it can really go both ways. But at the end of the day, I do think that there is a lot of value in shining that light on the cockroaches.
Yeah. And, to go back to it, I'm not sure that he would have done an interview with a different journalist. There has to be something to the fact that she was on that red team for so long that he probably thought she was more sympathetic than she was. I don't think that she's sympathetic to him. I don't want to put that out there. She definitely was not a fan, but I think that someone could have.
He wouldn't have done it if he hadn't thought that he could get one over on her, or he hadn't thought that he was somehow going to come out smelling like a rose.
Yeah.
Because that's why would he make himself look bad?
Right. Which is yet again, it's paining me to say this, but yet again, that just shows that he is smarter than our president. And it hurts me. It hurts me when I say that. But I mean, our president will sit down with the New York Times, apparently completely unfiltered, as if no one works with him, as if he has, I don't know if he's drugging General Kelly and like shoving him under the desk of the Oval Office. But where are all of his handlers? Where are the people who should be saying, no, this is a bad idea. Don't go in there without some talking points. Take some cards with you. Do something. Know what you're going to say. But no, he goes in there and goes off the rails multiple times.
Yeah. I saw a tweet today that somebody said basically, for 8 years, it was okay for people to debate whether or not our president was a citizen of the United States. But now the same people are too scared to debate whether or not our president is losing his mental facilities. So I was like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of signs that people have seen. And yeah, so anyway, well, we should probably wrap it up here for our listeners, but let's give them something fun to end with. Kelly, what have you got for us?
I've got an article that my mother shared on Facebook. Dun, dun, dun. Mom, I hope you're listening.
I hope you're listening too.
So my mom shared this, and she's very good about fake news, but because my parents are firefighters, my mom and my stepdad were both firefighters. They're retired now. I think this made her pause, and she hates Trump. One of my favorite things in the world is that my mother joined Twitter just to troll Trump.
That's why I love everything.
Yeah. I have to say I'm more active now that he's there. But honestly, some days I just go on to see what my mother has said to him today, and I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Is she following us? She needs to follow us so I can see, and I will follow her so I can see what she says.
Yeah, I will tell her to follow us, but I will definitely send you her Twitter handle. So the article is from Blue Dot Daily. It is a left-wing, very biased mixture of factual reporting. And the headline is, Trump, police officers and firefighters make too much money, hits them with tax penalty.
Ooh, bad Trump.
I know. So obviously this isn't exactly true. It's just part of the tax bill, and it has to do with the miscellaneous deductions. Snopes does have an article about it. However, the reason I did want to bring it up is because this is what we fight against all the time, Beth. This is pure clickbait. There is some factual reporting inside of the article, but in no way did Trump say anything to firefighters, to police officers. I mean, these itemized deductions count for teachers. They count for anyone who does these smaller itemized, and instead they just have this bulk. As much as I hate to defend anything to do with this tax scam bill.
Well, here's the thing that I've said before is there is plenty to hate Donald Trump for. You don't have to make stuff up.
Right. And Paul Ryan.
And you can And you can say that about the tax bill. There is plenty wrong with this tax bill without making up things about it. So, yeah. So just so our listeners know that, Snopes' article is called, Did Donald Trump Say Police Officers and Firefighters Make Too Much Money? And it is rated false. So,
yeah. And I will tell you, as the parents, as my parents were firefighters, they do not. You know,
they don't make tons of money.
They do not make tons of money. They, just like police officers, firefighters, put their lives on the line, and they are your first resource. If you get in an accident, they see things that you don't ever want to see, and they see it for an entire career. Like, people talk about PTSD with soldiers, and that is absolute, or soldiers, Marines, every branch of the military, you understand that there is PTSD. People do not talk about what happens with firefighters, and it really drives me crazy because they see things that it's unbelievable, the stories that I've heard. And those are only stories that they are willing to tell me, because there are things that they will not talk about with me.
Yeah, in a lot of areas, of firefighters are even volunteer.
Yes.
A lot of smaller areas can't support a fire department. They can't pay them. So a lot of these firefighters are doing it for free, and working full-time jobs, doing something else to support themselves. So, well, kudos to your mom and stepdad for their careers as firefighters. We love that. Yeah. So good job, mom and stepdad.
Yeah, and
but don't believe the fake news.
Don't believe the fake news. They are purely just designed for, they want you to have an emotional response so that you click through. Sometimes, I would even say probably the majority of the time, people don't click through, and that leads to more and more problems because then they've just read a headline. So they think that this is true.
So your mom posted this. Did you do a Snopes mic drop on her?
I did not. Someone else did. Someone else took that away from me, and that was fine because I actually think I said something along the lines of the headline should have read, Trump says, "Fuck you" to all middle class and poor people with the tax bill, which is closer to the truth. But
right,
it is. Firefighters and police officers can fall very squarely into that category.
Absolutely. Well, my dear, I think we should wrap it up and get back to our lives here.
Yes.
So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to, first of all, rate and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Anytime that you rate us, and it helps us let other people know about the podcast and get us out there. You can follow us on Twitter at Podcast Fake News. You can follow us at Facebook, same thing, at Podcast Fake News. Email us if you have any articles that you want us to review. If your mom posts something that you have to do a Snopes mic drop, let us know at podcastfakenews@gmail.com.
If you have a favorite fake news story, we'd love to read it. We love reading fake news and tearing it down.
And hey, Kelly and I actually do some more things on the side for our Patreon page. So if you go to patreon.com and sign up to give us $1 a month, that's it, $1 a month, you get to hear all of our extra content that we do as well. Right now we have an article review about Ireland and criminalizing people for sharing bots.
Yes.
So if you're interested in hearing more about that, go over to Patreon. That's patreon.com and sign up for that. And then as always, we have the blog at podcastfakenews.com where I will put up a guide for today's episode as well as the link to the song that I recommended and the book that Kelly recommended. So, hey, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, spread jam,
not lies.